Fun fact, did you know that Mounty, the creator of Rwby, was actually an amazing dancer? In fact, his favorite scene was the dancing in Volume 2's Dance Dance Infiltration. Actually, as a matter of fact, he even recreated the scene with other characters such as Torchwick's team of villains, Team Cardinal, the Beacon Teacher, and even Grimm's. In fact, the name of the episode is even a play on word on the game Dance Dance Revolution, which according to the Rwby staff is one of Mounty's favorite video games. Oh, well now you do. Greetings my viewers and welcome to my room. Now welcome back to our Rwby analysis series where last time we took a look at our main star, the Rwby team, which I will leave on screen as an annotation if you guys haven't seen it yet. But today, let's take a look at their good friend and my personal favorite team, Team Jnpr.
Baby, it's time to make up your mind.
Now, let's start off with your team leader and the suavest guy on Beacon campus, Jaune. The suavest.
Whoa, that's really
Wow, at least he's better than you. It was a joke, Stepnark. Let it go. Let it go. No! No! Bad, Stepnark, bad! Let's move back on subject. As you can tell by his name, Jaune is clearly based on Jaune of Arc, aka the Maid of Orleans, one of the 9 patron saints. Yeah, and she had more balls than he did. Shut it, Stepnark. I'm trying to keep the show PG. Back to the point. A common theme inside of Team Jnpr is that they're all based on characters who had actually cross-dressed in their original work. In fact, they even all possess the opposite gender of their original character inspiration. In the case for Jaune, he alludes to the time where Jaune of Arc had to disguise herself as a man in order to fight for the French army. Plus, you can also see this through Jaune's weapon choice, because in a world with bloody scyther, snipers, and shotgun gauntlet, he kept the classic sword and shield. I bet it's used as a cutting board and a knife, because you know, she's based on a chick. And we all know that guns are for mans. Really? A sexist joke? That's a new low, Stepnark, even for you. What it actually alludes to is that the sword and shield were also Jaune of Arc's main weapon of choice. Furthermore, Jaune's name not only resembles his historical counterpart, but also French for the color yellow, which links him to the French origin of Jaune of Arc. First off, Jaune is obviously a French word and Jaune of Arc is a French heroine. Secondly, the color yellow is actually a dominant color back in the days of the French army in the 14th century. In fact, on all of the royal arms emblems, you can see golden lilies on a blue background. Plus, this color yellow also links to Jaune's personality, since according to the color theory, yellow is a symbol of cowardness, which was a huge part of Jaune's story in Volume 1. Oh, you mean how he got bullied by that one kid Cardpool? It's Carden, Stepnarks. His name is Carden Winchester. And funny you should mention that, since this could come back to the idea of how Jaune is based off Jaune d'Arc. First of all, Carden kinda sounds like cardinal, which is his position in the Catholic Church. I mean, heck, even Carden's team name is literally Cardinal. This could allude to the fact that Jaune of Arc was persecuted and sentenced to death by being burned at stake by Henry Beaufort, who was also a cardinal. And plus, if we look at his last name, Winchester, this is another reference to Henry, since he was also the Bishop of Winchester. But now, I want to talk about Jaune's weapon, the Corsia Mors, which is, quite appropriately, Latin for the Yellow Death. AKA, every time you try to make scrambled eggs. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. You microwaved them. You tried to microwave eggs to make scrambled eggs. We have to buy a new microwave because of your stupidity! Okay, so I'm not that great at cooking, but that's not what the weapon is referring to, Snipnarks! The weapon actually shared the same name as Julius Caesar's swords in some legend. And, according to these same legends, the Emperor's sword was even embedded into a shield just like Jaune's weapon. In fact, the fact that Jaune's sword refers to two legendary heroes of war, the fact that he got the weapon from his great-great-grandfather who used it back in the Great War, and that it's very similar in design as the sword used by the male huntsman on the statue on Beacon Academy's campus could be a foreshadowing that Jaune is destined for great things and might one day become one of those legendary heroes he was based on. Really? Vomit boy over here? Hey, I said might, not will. But now, let's take a look at the invincible girl herself, Pyrrha Nikos. Now, major spoiler for Volume 3 here. So if you haven't seen the entirety of Volume 3, please skip to Nora's character analysis at this time. Done? Good, let's move on. Pyrrha, Penny, and Torchwick all died. Jesus Christ, man, spoilers! Hey, you gave them a warning, it's their fault. Yeah, but give them some time, man. You don't have to just, bombard them with all of these spoilers. Now, anyways, the inspiration for Pyrrha is the Greek hero Achilles. First off, they are both referred in their story as invincible warriors. In Achilles' case, he was bathed in the river Styx, the Death River, granting him impenetrable skin except on his heel. And in Pyrrha's case, she graduated top of her class back in Sanctum Academy and won the Maelstrom Regional Tournament 4 times in a row, which, according to Wise, is a feat unprecedented. I guess you can say that this girl was on fire. Dude, too soon. Anyways, secondly, Pyrrha's weapons, Milo and Akul, possess a Zelos and shield form, which are the exact weapon that the legendary soldier used. Thirdly, in the Greek legend, Achilles actually disguised himself as a red-headed girl in order to avoid fighting in the Trojan world. And I'll let you guess what his name was as this girl. Elsa! Jesus Christ, knock it off already! I'm not talking about Frozen! The alias he actually took was Pyrrha, which explains the naming choice of the character. However, this isn't the only reason for her name, since Melty has stated that she named Pyrrha after her hair, since Pyrrha is derived from the Greek adjective Pyrrhos, which means flame color. Actually, speaking of her name, her last name is actually Nikos, which means victor of the people, derived from Nikes. Just do it! The Greek goddesses of victory, not the company that makes your shoes! This, once again, links back to the idea of the invincible warrior she was portrayed as. Now, there's one final similarities between these two, and it's in how their character died. In Achilles' case, he was shot by a poison arrow on his only weak point, which was his heel, and slowly died from the poison in that arrow. In Pyrrha's case, he was shot by cinder in the chest, also with an arrow, and then disintegrated into ashes. Well, I guess you can say they took an arrow to the knee. Once again, man, too soon. And that's not all. In fact, her name could also be referring to a Pyrrhic victory, a tactical victory that comes at such an extreme cost that is often seen as a strategic defeat. Which is totally the case here since they killed off the best character in the show! God, calm down! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm calm now. I'm calm. Now let's end off talking about her semblance.
What? How did you...
Well, Ruby has her speed, you have your glyphs. My semblance is polarity.
Oh, you can control poles. No, you dunce! It means she has control over magnetism. Magnets are cool too.
her semblance may come from Magneto. No, it's probably a reference to Pyrrha, one of the only two minerals along with magnetite that are found naturally magnetized. Knock it off, Stepnarks. Now, let's talk about the queen of the castle herself, Nora Valkyrie.
I'm queen of the castle. I'm queen of the castle.
So, what Rule 63 fan art is she supposed to be? Rule what? Just Google it. Anyways, she's based on Thor, the god of thunder. Wait, she's based on an adventure? I love that movie! You do realize that Thor was a thing before comic books, right? Wait, there's a comic book about Thor? What? How do you think they made the movie? I don't know, Hollywood magic? No, and first of all, that's not even the Thor we're talking about. The one we're talking about isn't the Marvel version, but the one for Norse mythology. Starting out with her emblem, it's a lightning bolt passing through a hammer, which obviously alludes to the legendary hammer of Thor, Mjolnir. In addition, there's another reference to this hammer in her design, this time in her weapon named Maghild, which is a large hammer whose name is even derived from Old Norse. Even the meaning of the two hammers are kind of similar. Mjolnir roughly translates to the crusher, while Maghild means mighty or strong. Oh really? Then what about the reason that her hammer is also a freaking grenade launcher? Okay, so obviously not everything about Nora is based off Thor, but the grenade idea is actually inspired by a video of a Mexican tradition where people hit explosives with sledgehammer. Wait, is that an actual thing? Yeah, it's an annual festival that happens every February in the Mexican village San Juan de la Vega, and it's actually part of a celebration of the village namesake, San Juanitos. And what is he, the patron saint of blowing shit up? Maybe? Anyway, back to Thor. There's actually even more link between Nora and this character. Wait, before you go on about boring mythology and all that, can I ask one thing first? What? You said earlier that all inspiration for these characters had cross-dressed in their original story, but I don't remember anywhere in the movie that Thor cross-dressed. Look, I already told you that she's not based on the superhero. That explains why you didn't see it in the movie. The story that it's actually referring to was the time the Norse god had his hammer stolen by the chief of the frost giant, Thrym, who refused to return it until the All-Mother Freya becomes her bride. In order to attempt to take his weapon back and to save Freya the humiliation, Thor disguised himself as her, and when the ceremony started, Thrym, the god, or basically the chief of the frost giant, made the mistake of leaving the hammer on Thor's lap, which the god of thunder then took and proceeded to slay them all. Well, that escalated quickly. Actually, if you're curious about this myth, there's actually a Sword Art Online episode on it. So, I'll leave the link of Crunchyroll on the description if you guys want to check the episode out. Now, let's talk about her semblance and her name. Her semblance is another allusion to the god of lightning, since it's the ability to produce and channel electrical energy into her muscle, giving her enhanced strength. She can also absorb electricity from a direct blow or use Maghild as a lightning rod, similarly to how Thor is able to channel and control the lightning using his hammer Mjolnir as a conductor of his power. In fact, even Nora's name could be an abbreviation of the Greek Eleanor or Eleonora meaning light, or the Latin honora meaning honor. Plus, in Arabic, Nora is another form of Nor, which literally means light, which all come back to the idea of the legendary war god of lightning. However, this isn't the only explanation of her name, since it could also be referring to Laura Ballon Columbine, a pink flower, which would explain her main color scheme and basically her entire merchandise based on this color. Finally, her last name comes from the Valkyries of Norse mythology, female warrior servant of the god of Valhalla. Actually, this kind of goes back to the idea that her name might actually have another inspiration, since Nora could just be a derision of the word Norse, which once again comes back to the idea of Thor being the Norse god of thunder. But now, enough about our female Norse Scott. Let's talk about her best friend, Ren. Now before you ask, Stepnards, Ren is based off Hua Mulan. And as everyone knows, either from the original Chinese poem or from the Disney movie, Mulan has once cross-dressed as a man in order to join the Chinese army. Why does woman always dresses as man to join the army while mans just try to cut off your finger in order to avoid joining? Sexism and cowardness? I don't know. Anyway, unlike Nora, Ren doesn't share many similarities with his inspiration Mulan, except in their character design and in their Chinese origin. In fact, his name is actually supposed to be pronounced Liazhen, which is Mandarin for hunter, which is quite appropriate. However, weird thing, despite him having an actual Chinese name, the Chinese media often refers to him as Lian, which means ardent lotus. However, the reason behind this could be that Ren is actually Japanese for lotus, hence explaining his emblem. Plus, his clothing is reminiscent of the traditional Chinese clothing. And finally, his first encounter with the Grimm on the show was a pair of King Tai Ji Tu, the black half and the white half, which is a clear reference to the Chinese Taoism symbol of yin and yang. And that concludes our second episode of our Rooby Marathon. Join us next time where we'll take a look at Team Sun. Ciao!